Soto and
Absolutely.
Chad here with Dumb Debates, and that's what we're
Dumb
going. So we are
debates. We're here
going to
already.
our first topic, and the first topic is one that you brought up, and this is a very interesting one. And you asked if video games have peaked. And I kind of
Yeah.
want you to explain that because I thought about this a little bit, and I have certain thoughts. But why did you ask this question or ask me this question? Why did you want this to be? Why do you think video games have peaked? Because I'm assuming you think this because you brought it up. So
Yeah, well, but I don't necessarily think I do or I don't. I think that I've thought about it. I was actually talking to my brother-in-law about this when I saw him recently, very briefly, and it got me thinking because he was like, "Do you think that the games are coming out are better than the ones that came out before now, like less and less?" Because like when we were younger, this pretty much should be the name of our fucking podcast. Um, it's like that should be just the name of this channel. It's like back in the '80s. Um, but when we were younger, it's like every generation of consoles that would come out would be like it would feel like it was leaps and bounds from what it was before. And from like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Master System, Genesis, so on and so forth. Every time something came out, you're like, oh my god! And then PlayStation One came out, and it's like, okay, fucking, this looks great. We've had this conversation before about how we used to go to the arcades because it had better graphics at the arcades, and so you would get a different experience in the arcade that you couldn't replicate at home. So I just felt that that just kept continuing on, and even between PlayStation 3 and then PlayStation 4 is even better. It's like, and I have a PlayStation 5. It's fantastic. But like the games that come out, like yeah, they're a little bit more like photorealistic. Yeah, they're a little bit more like interesting, but it doesn't seem to be like like the leaps are being made like they used to be made. And I think that that's probably what my brother-in-law was kind of trying to get at, and him and I probably would have talked about it more, um, had we had the time. But like I think it's just get like the gap of innovation is getting less and less, and so you have these games that come out, and it's like, not just from graphics, but gameplay as well. I feel like there's only so many ways that you can do a game now. RPGs are either going to be turn-based, or they're going to be action, or they're going to be open world, or they're going to be like text-heavy, or I don't know. It's like I feel like it's been done. So this might be another sign of just growing old, but it just doesn't feel to me like it's progressing like it used to. Um, Yeah, ultimately, I feel like there's a cap for graphics, right? Like, they get to a point of graphics where it's like photorealism. Okay, well, nothing can happen after that, right? Like once it's photorealistic, like that's what we've always wanted. To be like, oh, these graphics are so realistic. Like I've had people come over and me just playing Madden and being like, is this a real game? And I'm like, no, it's not. Because I'm a jaded gamer and I'm like, clearly there's pixels on here. What are you talking about? But for people like, who don't play video games, they're like, oh my God, these games are like so realistic. So that's really what got me thinking about it. I still think that there are innovative games and games that come out that excite me, but there's nothing, it's very rare that I'll buy a game and pay full price. It's just rare. I talk about it all the time. It's not so much because I can't afford it. Because honestly, I could definitely afford $20 games and $25 games, but I just don't because I'm like I don't feel like I have to. There's not like a FOMO or like an excitement about it really. Helldivers was one that I was like following closely, and thankfully we were lucky enough to get it. Um, but I don't know. Like that's what got me thinking about it. I'm just interested to think if you have the same kind of opinion or not.
Well, it's funny. Before I go with my thoughts, Cynic in our chat kind of brought up a good point. He's like, I don't think peak is the right word, but he does think we are in a slump, at least for mainstream games. And he thinks that indie games are actually at an all time high for quality now, which I can understand that. So
Sure.
when you brought up this question, I was just thinking, and I actually, funny thing is, I went online and I looked at like every generation of video game systems because I
Hmm.
think I'm kind of agreeing with you because if you look at what's called the first generation, the Odyssey, second generation, it went up, the Atari, and so on, and like you kind of went through all that. And between the eighth and ninth, we went from PS4 to PS5, and while the graphics look better, yes, the consoles, it's not anything big, it's not anything different, but is it? I don't know if games at peak because there is storytelling in games, and that for me
Sure.
personally, that's what grabs me about it as a good game. Now, if you look at two games that I beat this year, PlayStation 5 only games, Final Fantasy 16, which is one of the best in the series, one of the more adult themed ones, which is fucking awesome, which I still will lend to you soon, Soto, next time I see you. And then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So the storytelling's there, and there is some great mainstream games. I just don't think there's enough consoles or just enough. I don't know. Go ahead.
Here's like what I think. I think is probably my biggest problem with games right now, and it's not a unique one. But there is no incentive for any of these companies to go away from subscription-based fucking gaming or models or like, the DLC stuff that's it. Like the microtransaction shit that's in games right now is it's a huge part of everything that's going on. I don't play Fortnite, but I imagine that there's some level of microtransactions in that if you want to, right? Which people do, but like I remember reading about Grand Theft Auto, the last one, Grand Theft Auto 5 was supposed to be, have a little bit more DLC, whatever, but they just got so into the microtransactions of the DLC, they had no reason to do it because they just made easy money. So I just look at that situation and I'm just like, I feel like video game companies, yes, there always is going to be the fringe that like, is fighting for like the indie kind of thing and everything like that, and like doing their own thing and doing really great things. But there's going to be a lot of big companies that are just going to be like, this is the easiest way for us to do this. We're going to charge you for A, B, and C, or like cosmetics or anything like that, because they make money off of that, because kids will go to their parents and make them buy it. So like the big companies are not incentivized to fucking do anything about it, because the kids are always going to spend money on shit. They're always going to go to the parents and ask for extra points or whatever the fuck they get. And I'm way out of touch with it, so I apologize. But like, you know what I mean? Like as a company, like I don't feel like big video game companies are ever going to back away from that. And I think that's kind of tough. I mean, even DLCs now. I mean, fuck, games that cost $70 now, brand new.
Yeah, in general, yeah. And I know me and you are cheap, and we've talked about this. Like, it's tough to pay $70 for a game, so yeah.
It's like, I get that with the cartridges, like back in N64 days, they were also like $70. But it made sense. You had this big, bulky plastic cartridge that you had to actually make, and it was expensive at the time. But these are like discs that are not that expensive, so it's tough to, and I get it, I do want like good working conditions for people in these industries as well, because I know there's a lot of issues with crunch, but like, I don't know. This subscription thing I think is one thing where, it may keep it from going there, but thankfully there are like the indies and like other companies that are doing it right, and hopefully they'll continue to do so. But like with Larian, who did Baldur's Gate 3, they're not going to do the next Baldur's Gate because they don't agree with like the people who own the Baldur's Gate, like Dungeons Dragons, like fucking IP. You know what I mean? So they'll continue to do good games, and that's fine. But I don't know. Like they won't do another Baldur's Gate game, which is kind of too bad, because I don't know, that was a pretty good game. So
I don't know. I mean, we just don't know what the next wave of games, because I do believe there's just going to be something that comes along, because it always happens. Every so on that. We're just like, holy shit, I never thought about this, and it just fucking works.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, to that all, that all sounds nice. I mean, we've wanted virtual reality. Virtual reality so far, I mean, I don't know. It's been kind of a miss, right? It hasn't been like a huge thing. So I wouldn't say it's a complete miss, but I'm just saying that it's not as huge as it could have been, because we always thought, even when we were kids, like VR would be something that we'd be super interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that around the corner? Like, is that going to be PlayStation? PlayStation 6? Like,
7,
what's PlayStation? Like, in your opinion, right now, what do you think PlayStation 6 is going to bring to the table?
I don't know, but I couldn't really think of what PlayStation 5 was going to bring to the table.
Just a little bit better graphics, right?
Correct. I mean, that's pretty much all it's done. Maybe it's just something to take gaming at a whole new level. As far as VR goes, I loved it. Jill had a few VR games, and we're doing it for a while. It just takes so long to set up, and it's we just don't want to keep it in front of the TV too, so we kept putting it away. Now it's like, yeah, whatever. It was fun, but it's nothing that we're going to be playing every time. So I don't know, unless they can get like a portable VR, just some helmet that you just put on and it's quick, it's there. That'd be the next step for VR, but. Like I said, I don't know what PSX. I don't want to think about PSX. I just want games. I just want to play, and I'm slowly going through my backlog, and there's still games I feel I want to play. That's why I don't think they've peaked. I don't think there's a full slump of, video games right now, because there's still things on
I like
play.
The slump idea. Yeah, the slump idea I can get behind, because it's just kind of like an in-between place. It's kind of just like we're in between the last thing and the new thing, and it's like undetermined how long this is gonna last for, you know?
I don't know. I still feel like there's new things that they can do. And so I don't feel like it's even got to the point. Yeah, we might be in a slump, and I think a lot of that, like I said, might have been the last couple of years. Even though we've gone up in sales, I would like another new handheld device. I don't know that could play like the PS5 games without having to turn on my PS5 because I think that's what the whatever that new I can't even think of the name of it. Like Vista, what was it? PS, I can't remember.
Well, yeah, I don't remember either.
Either way,
Huh.
I
Huh.
don't know where the hardware goes from here, but I know
Yeah.
it'll be something that will surprise me. Um,
I'd like it to be smaller. This is too much. Like, this is a lot. I get it. It's whatever, but I mean, I thought we were going smaller, like, right? That's what the future was. Um, that everything would be smaller and smaller and less whatever. I mean, I do have a PS5 with a Blu-ray player in it. I would tell you that when I put the Blu-ray in there, it's like loud as fuck,
hmm
like trying to fucking play. And I'm like, oh my God, why did I even get this? And we'll get into that later as well, but I would like smaller, you know, that's my thing. Um, I will say this, coming from my background in business really quick, at least this is my thinking. If I'm a business and I'm successful in a subscription-based model, and I've got enough users to go into it, and the microtransactions are going well and everything like that, I have zero interest in innovation.
hmm.
There's nothing to incentivize me to innovate as a head of a department or a head of a business if what I'm currently doing has growth potential and continues to go into that. Like, it's like the gambling thing with the dopamine like kind of reaction. It's like you get, kids to get into things young enough, and then, that's disposable income that they keep grabbing from adults. And if that still has growth potential, why would I take a risk on something that may or may not work, right? So maybe somebody will in the future. I'm not saying they won't, but just from a general kind of structure of how, a business is run, you really mitigate risk as much as you can. And if something is profitable and it's going to continue to grow in that space, um, then there's no reason to innovate other than just, I mean, there's really no reason to innovate. So, I hope that's not the case. I know there's a lot of great companies. I know that there are companies that are run by gamers. Um, and so people who do want to innovate, but I think that the big bad guys are always going to be, the big bad guys, and they're always going to charge so much money uh, to try to get you to have an emotional response. So, but that's just, again, my opinion.
But yeah, I think video game systems they'll find a way. It might be a competition thing. They might, it's whoever takes that chance and whoever succeeds, because that's the whole how Sony PlayStation started. Nintendo's like, yeah, I don't know, and then yeah, PlayStation, Sony was like,
Well,
we'll do it on our own.
that's a great point though, because Xbox is like sucking right now. And it's like, we've talked about this with WCW and WWF, right? It's like you need competition to drive what I was talking about, the innovation, right? It's like there has to be competition. Right now, it's like Sony. And like Microsoft has done a lot of stupid ass fucking decisions. I think we talked about this
Yeah,
recently. So you're right. I think that that's the way out is hoping that competition improves, and that ultimately, that's where the innovation comes from. But you got to have competitors, and to me, that's why I stopped watching WWE because WWE, once it took over WCW, there was no fucking reason for them to improve. They already won. You don't have another wrestling thing to watch. I mean, sure, I guess you can watch AEW, but like, you don't have another option really. Like, if you want to watch wrestling, it's going to be WWE, and so there's no incentive for them to get better in that situation. Not in a real
but in a
way,
weird way, I know you stopped watching in. I know Vince
God,
McMahon
a
left,
long time
and
ago.
the product has gotten better. The ratings have gotten better. So sometimes it might just be a change you don't realize you need. And yes,
That's a
there
good
is
point.
AEW, and I know TNA is still around. And funny that we're going to
Is it?
wrestling from TNA is
We
still
always go to
around.
wrestling.
But that's the thing, yes, WWE is the big guy, the number one, still is, always has been. But I think when Vince McMahon had to step down with whatever allegations, not going to get into it, and Triple H kind of took over creative, and I know Dwayne Johnson and TKO bought them, so all new management, but all of a sudden there was a different vision. You have basically a guy who was a wrestler, who did live the business and understand it, whether you liked him or not, now running things. It's somehow the stories and everything, more things matter. You've joked, like Attitude Era, you know, they're like, whether you're the top guy, the little guy, you had a story. You had, you know, no one cared about the wrestling in Attitude Era. Think about it. We talked about this. The matches sucked. And I'm sorry, you know, people who are Attitude Era fans, I'm sorry. Yes, Stone Cold, you know, he comes out, big pop. But the bottom line is, you watch the majority of those matches, they're quick, they're dumb, they're stupid. But the characters, and they are just over because they made every story matter, whether you're at the top of the card or the bottom of the card. And that's where you said they bought WCW. They're like, yeah, fuck it, you know, these two guys can fight. Why? Just have them fight. Who cares? You know, there's still quality matches, but that's why it died. And now Triple H has kind of brought back the long-term booking, you know, things like he did with Hogan. You know, if you think like when Hogan and Savage were huge, that whole year feud, and even the Warrior, just everything. It's not just quick. So I think there's a lot more it's turning. So in a way, back to your point, yes, Sony kind of is the big dog right now. Microsoft just upped their Game Pass too, the price of their Game Pass. I don't know if you read about this.
Bad timing for that. No,
it's like $5 more a month, if I read this correctly. If Sony can come up with a way, you can change even if you're the top dog. You just have to find a way. And Cynic, to your point about Saudi money, that was still on Vince McMahon. Triple H still has to honor the deal. So they made a deal before him, and so they will still go. So yes, but they still create the storylines through. Yes, they obviously want to bring the big matches, but the storylines are still continuing. But that was the deal made with Vince McMahon that still has to be honored. So, but yeah, I mean, back to the whole video games thing. I still think there's a lot that we have not seen, and I think there's a lot of things that they will try, and it's whoever takes that first step. Because, like you said, you know, right now it's Sony, but if you remember, even though I was a Sony guy from day one, 360 was bigger than PS3. That was the era of Xbox, and then PS4 kind of, you know, PS5 took over. So it can change, but yeah, I think there needs to be more direct competition. I know Nintendo has its niche audiences, and people still have, you know, they have great games, but they're not there with the big dogs anymore. It just doesn't feel like it. I don't know. That could just be me.